Are you enjoying Bourbon Podcast? Be sure to leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. And by the way, thanks for listening. Hey everybody, thanks for joining Bourbon Podcast. The gang is all together. It's been a while. We've had a few episodes where everybody wasn't together.
I know. Missed these guys.
Yeah.
Together.
We missed you too.
We did miss
When you
you.
missed me. There was a lot of missing.
I know.
We got Joe and Kyle, and this is Ben. Hey, we've got a really cool guest today, Donnis Todd of Garrison Brothers, Master Distiller. Of course, we had Dan Garrison on a few episodes ago, and he was telling us the story of how he and Donnis met. I'm anxious to find out exactly what's going on. And we're going to try a few Garrison Brothers releases. We were lucky enough to get a sample of the Cowboy Bourbon, 140.9 proof. Damn.
Let me see that.
That's so crazy. And not even on the shelf yet.
What's the other one they sent over? The
Was it a single barrel? Or was it
yeah, we've got another one here we're going to try with Donnis.
Oof.
And
that's crazy.
I mean, full disclosure, we did Balmorhea, in our last.
It was great.
And it was outstanding. So I am excited about everything we're going to drink today.
And I picked up a bottle of Balmorhea when I was in Louisville a couple weeks ago. I actually found one on the shelf.
Sweet.
Yeah, which was good. Anyway, before we get to Donnis Todd, let's talk a little bit of news. Have you guys heard Buffalo Trace is launching a new Prohibition-inspired whiskey collection? Have you guys heard about this?
I briefly read about it.
So this is it's a five whiskey set. They are 375 milliliters. It's going to MSRP about $1,000, and it's kind of a throwback to their.
wait,
yeah,
pardon?
wait a minute. Yeah, so it's going to be in a wooden box. They're going to be 5 bottles, 375. And listen, the article that I've got this from even talks about how crazy that is. But anyway, let's forget that part for just a second. It's called the Prohibition Collection, and it's kind of a throwback to the George T. Stagg Distillery. It talks about the noble experiment, and from 1920 until Prohibition's repeal in 1933, you had to actually have a doctor's prescription to purchase alcohol. So this is kind of a throwback to that. The 5 releases are, one is going to be called Old Stag. It's uncut, unfiltered, barrel proof, 132.4. And then we have Golden Wedding. It's a rye whiskey bottled at 107 proof and is based on the Pennsylvania brand originally made at the Joseph S. Finch Distillery, Shenley Distilling, which bought George T. Stagg in 1929. And then I think it later became a Canadian whiskey. The third one is Three Feathers. It's bottled in bond 100 proof, at least 4 years old, created by master blender Drew Mayville. According to Buffalo Trace, this brand dates back to the 19th century, and I believe it's a rye. Let's see. No, sometimes it was a rye. This is going to be a bottled in bond. Fourth, Walnut Hill, which was bottled by George T. Stagg during Prohibition, but little else is revealed about the origin of that whiskey. It is a 90 proof high rye bourbon with notes of corn, oak, sweet molasses, stone fruit, and vanilla. Did we ever figure out what a stone fruit is?
Yeah, that's like peaches, plums.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that before doing. Yeah. Okay. Well, clearly I'm incapable of learning. Last but not least, George T. Stagg Distillery Spiritus Frumenti is a tribute to the medicinal whiskey produced by the distiller during Prohibition. The Latin translates to spirit of the grain. It's 110 proof wheated bourbon with notes of cherry and oak and a finish with vanilla, wheat, and citrus.
I have so many questions.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, what?
Why?
What? Where are these? These are not all. They're new mash bills. These are like experimental mash bills that have been.
Yeah, apparently it's a throwback to what they were doing between 1920 and 1920 and 1933. Some of their old whiskeys. They can't actually advertise them now as medicinal. That would be, they'd get in big trouble. But that's kind of, the thought behind what they're doing now. It's a throwback.
Not age stated and just.
Well, some of one or two were bottled in bond.
Yeah, so. The one was bottled in bond, so it's a minimum of 4 year, 100 proof. But other than that, we don't have a lot of details.
A whole lot of details. Can you imagine what the secondary will be on that?
No.
Box set?
No. It's
I
going to
mean,
be.
I was just asking you about Mr. Sam, that they released, right? And I'm like, well, I can only imagine where this one's going to come
No,
in.
it's going to be crazy. So Harlan Wheatley, of course, Buffalo Trace master distiller, says each of these brands disappeared slowly in the years after Prohibition, but they were integral to our survival. Without them today, there would be no Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare, or Weller bourbons. The Prohibition collection is a tribute to these great whiskeys from our past.
so even during Prohibition, when it was medicinal, they still were like branded. That's interesting. I didn't really
Yeah.
know how that worked.
Yeah, as opposed to like just something in a bottle you would get at the pharmacy.
I think they just had a license to distribute. And they're the only one that could stay open, right? So that's why they quote the longest consecutively open whatever distillery, because we all know now like some of these distilleries date back much older, but they had I guess they were closed during Prohibition.
Yeah,
or for a period of time.
So I mean, you're not very few people are going to find this in MSRP. MSRP is high.
Yeah.
Well, they're already getting 5,
half bottles.
Half bottles. Yeah. What do you think this is going to? I mean, this is going to be $4,000 or $5,000 on the secondary.
Well,
I mean,
this is a one-time release or what?
Apparently, it's been an annual release. That's what this press release says. It's an annual now,
but limited. Does it say how many?
It does not. No, it doesn't give any information like that. But anyway, if anybody sees it, send me a picture. That's probably as close as I'll get to.
I mean, Buffalo Trace. I mean, you got to go four times.
Yeah,
I'd say
5 times. I mean, probably.
Oh, well, Woodford Reserve today released a new limited edition bottle of its annual distillery series, Toasted Oak 4-grain. Did you hear about this, Joe?
Can't keep up with all of them, but this is their master, which series?
No,
it's not.
No, this is just it's just a new limited edition bottle. So, from the distillery series, it doesn't say master.
What is this?
Well, they have that Masters collection release that they do,
which is a limited,
really good.
And every year they do one. And I thought the historic was that 22 or 23, but now I'm getting a little confused. But
anyway, this new release is a blend of Woodford's bourbon, rye, wheat, and malt whiskeys. The whiskey was first aged in a standard new oak barrel and then finished in a heavily toasted new oak barrel. Let's see here. What else do we know about that? Toasted 4-grain is part of the distillery series, not the Masters, which is created to push Woodford Reserve's creative boundaries and introduce new whiskeys to the market. This selection was masterminded by McCall, which I believe is the master distiller, and is available for purchase in limited quantities at Woodford Reserve Distillery and limited Kentucky retailers.
Okay.
Yeah. Master distiller Elizabeth McCall. I don't know. It's we'll see. I doubt there'll be many of those. This came out yesterday. Actually, this is the Speed Art Museum's Art of Bourbon. They had an auction, and I guess the one that a lot of people were bidding on. It does not say who won it, although a couple of the other unicorns, if you will, it does say who won them. A first edition Pappy 23, which is a 1998 bottle. It's the first year that Julian Van Winkle III went to market with the 23-year-old, and that's the one with the tall green tinted glass and the gold wax on top that is no longer made. Now, actually, I'm curious. What do you think this went for?
I'm gonna go 25K.
Yeah, I was gonna say around 20,000.
35,000. In fact, they said that the bidding war was so intense they had to halt the bidding for a moment.
They were like fighting.
I don't know. They must have served.
So did you win it or not?
Me? No, I was not there. No. Now this one is interesting. So another very rare bottle, and I'm just going to read this as is because this is public. Who bought it? Sports gambler, author, and philanthropist Billy Walters bet big and came away with one of the evening's unicorns, the ultra rare George T. Stagg Prohibition bottle. $21,000. Walters took home this pristine bottle of brown water with a backstory. This 16-year-old expression, distilled prior to 1917 and bottled in 1928, was produced at the George T. Stagg Company, which was under the new leadership of Colonel Albert Blanton. To protect it from being reused once consumed, Four Roses Distillery developed the first patented tamper-proof container. That patent is still visible on the top of the box, because they were running low on their own whiskey to sell. Four Roses marketed the bottle. So this was an old 1928, released in 1928 bottle of George T. Stagg.
Jeez. No, that's cool.
That is cool.
I like that bottle.
But I mean, you're not opening it.
No. What, I wonder, and I've seen some of those old Dusties. I've never tasted one that's 100 years old. I was at Justin's House of Bourbon a couple of weeks ago, and they had a 1973 Old Forester that was only released in Japan. I did a 1.5 ounce pour of it.
Oh boy,
it was good,
and
it wasn't crazy expensive. It was, I mean, it was pricey, but for a 50-year-old whiskey, but it was good. It was good. I prefer today's, and it's been sitting around a while. The third bottle the third unicorn was a 20-year-old A.H. Hirsch, went for $15,500.
Yeah,
and they released they named the person who bought that as well. But so that was a very successful auction. All told, they raised $318,000.
That's a big one.
That is a big one. That is a big one. That's one of the older bottles that I've seen, at least bottles of bourbon that I've seen auction. Over 100 years old. The George T. Stagg.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get into the interview with Donnis Todd, big shout out to Leesburg, Virginia. Any idea why I'm shouting out Leesburg, Virginia today?
Bowman Brothers?
No. Listen to this. So, I go through and I measure, which cities are following us the most. And Leesburg, Virginia is ranked number 8 on our, not just our downloads, but also our subscribers. So thanks to all of our friends in Leesburg, Virginia. We appreciate you tuning in.
Great.
We have somebody's family member down there.
Well, there's a lot of, there are a lot of that are listening in. So we appreciate it. What's our number 1 city?
No, Dallas or Houston or something.
I thought you'd do that because Texas is our number 1 state.
Yeah.
But what's our number 1 city, Kyle?
L.A.
L.A. is actually number 12.
Huh.
Oh.
Seattle.
Oh.
Seattle, Washington. Shout out to our friends out there. I'm sure it's probably raining right now.
Go Hawks.
All right, so here's the list. Not that anybody cares other than me, but I'm going to say it anyway. Number 1, Seattle. Number 2, New York City. Number 3, Atlanta. Number 4, Chicago. Number 5, Denver. So no Texas city makes the top 5, yet Texas is our number 1 state. Because number 6, Dallas, go Cowboys. 7, Philadelphia. 8, of course, Leesburg. 9, Charlotte. 10, Washington, D.C. Indianapolis and Los Angeles is the top 12.
So we all live in the same city, small city, but not in the top. I mean, I would have thought Charleston would have been.
Oh, no. It's way down there. It's like number 40.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And in fact, when I get the rankings from Apple, I only see, that could be Charleston, South Carolina for all I know.
Oh, yeah.
But it just says Charleston. It doesn't say the state. The others are easy to figure out. But
wow.
So anyway, thanks for all the folks that are tuning in. New York City, you got to catch Seattle. Come on, you got to download some episodes. Let's go. You're close. You're about 150 subscribers behind, so catch up.
Let's go. Let's go, Manhattan.
All right, thanks, folks. Next up, Donnis Todd. Are you enjoying Bourbon Podcast? Be sure to leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. And by the way, thanks for listening. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. We've got Donnis Todd on. Am I correct? The first master distiller in Texas. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, I guess if we're counting that way, there's probably been a lot of good old Texans making spirits for a long time in Texas. We just decided to pay taxes and get the permits and do it legally and hang the shingle out front. So I don't think we need to say we're the first. We're just the first paying taxes.
Well, the bourbon that I've had from Garrison Brothers so far, I have absolutely loved, and that's why. We had Dan Garrison on a few episodes ago, and we reached out to him, begging him to come on because, what's it called, the Balmoral?
Yeah, Balmoral.
It was one of my favorites that I'm not just talking about Texas. It's one of my favorite bourbons. It's a little harder to get here, but I picked up a few bottles.
Yeah, we quickly went out and purchased that bottle. I did on the secondary. I've been scouring for it. It is delicious.
Yeah, it really is.
Thank you for your support. And, if you still enjoy the bourbon after you did a podcast with Dan Garrison, then you really like my craft and my art. So literally the bourbon's speaking for itself. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, that's right. We like it in spite of his interview. It was a really entertaining interview. And I probably got, I mean, I got dozens and dozens of emails afterwards talking about, a lot of people didn't know his story about, Enron and what led him into, becoming a bourbon guy.
Yeah,
And,
but
his trip
probably
to
half of
Kentucky.
them were people looking for him.
That's probably true. I did
true.
not give any update on his whereabouts, so he's safe. He also told us a great story about you, how you guys met. But before we get to that, my understanding, you started doing bourbon whiskey back with your grandfather when you were young, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. My mom, custodian at my high school. My dad was a truck driver for Ford Motor Company, and my grandfather made corn whiskey on the side in the back corner of his tool and die shop. So, what school bus you all think I got off of? Grandpa's was a lot of fun. Homework wasn't all that important, and to be honest, I fell in love with the stories that my grandfather told. At a young age, I realized that most of them were really, really fabricated. And but I would egg him on to tell those stories, and I just wanted to have my own stories. He seemed like he was enjoying life much more than mom and dad grinding, those normal traditional jobs. So here I am, so many years later.
That's cool. So, did you grow up in Ohio?
I did. Yeah, I'm like the bumper sticker. I got to Texas as fast as I could. But yeah, I grew up. I grew up in Ohio. I'm a Buckeye, and I spent. Don't thank me for this. I wasted your tax dollars. But I spent 10 years in the United States Air Force, and that's where I fell in love with Texans. No matter where the Air Force sent me, sometimes before we ever even had a bathroom or a shower, I knew right where the Texans were. They had their flag up. And I always knew I wanted to make bourbon whiskey for a living and have my own stories. And when I met Texans while in the service, I said, I want to be on their team. Man, them folks are proud, proud, proud. So, like I said, I got to Texas as quick as I could.
Well, now I'm curious. Cowboys?
No, I'm glutton for punishment my entire life.
Cleveland Browns?
Browns.
Yeah, the Brownies, baby. You know what I mean? I'm always going to call the tribe, the Indians, and the Cavs. So, I'm just glutton for punishment. It takes me a long time to get over anything. I married my 1990 prom date, so I'm not going to give up on my Brownies.
There you go. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. They actually look like they got a decent team this year.
They've had a good start.
They do.
So, you learn how to make bourbon in Ohio. You do 10 years in the United States Air Force, and then you're in Texas. And how in the world did you hook up with Dan Garrison? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I knew where I wanted to do it. So, it's public knowledge. Anyone can jump on some websites and see when you get a rectifier's permit, when you get that federal and then the state permit, when you get all that. And that's what I did. I was keeping an eye on it, and I knew I wanted to go to Texas. And when I saw DSP number 5, Lone Star LLC pop up, had a lot of folks in Texas, and said, hey, find out who this Dan Garrison is. And they got back to me pretty quick, said, hey, man, it's this guy out of Austin. He bought the old Pitts Ranch down by Lyndon B. Johnson's old ranch down in High, Texas by Stonewall, and says he's going to make bourbon whiskey. And I literally sold everything but a Harley and my kids, and we rolled to Texas. And I showed up, told Dan, hey, I said, I'm Donnis Todd, and I'm gonna make bourbon whiskey for you. And he's like, oh, hold up. He was a little startled. He wasn't quite ready for that. He was still trying to figure stuff out. And I was like, man, you seem like a really smart guy. You got some stuff going on. You'll figure it out. And, I just didn't take no for an answer. I freelanced with him, I don't know, 6 months or so. And some say, I guess it depends on who telling the story. He says I tricked him. I tell him I convinced him. So this December will be 17 years. And it's a true honor and privilege to make bourbon whiskey in High, Texas with the team I get to make it with. And the Garrisons are great, great people.
Well, I tell you what, we absolutely loved him, and he was kind enough to invite us to High, Texas, for the release of this year's Cowboy Bourbon. I think it was September 23rd, and he was going to put us to work making breakfast burritos for like the 2 or 3 mile line of people that wait outside the distillery to get one of these bottles.
Yeah, well, we're truly blessed. My Cowboy Bourbon, this is the ninth time in the last 17 years that I put it together for Dan and Charlie. It was the first one that reached that hazmat, over 140 proof. This one was a buck 40, so 140.9. The barrels went together super sexy. I know you all have some of it. Can't wait for you to taste it, or if you have, to hear what you think about it. And what Cowboy Bourbon is uncut, unfiltered, cast strength. That's all the piggy banks that I come across. So the workhorse of Garrison Brothers is our small batch bourbon, and it's 50 to 55 barrels that I hand select and marry together. And I just do that over and over and over. So I'm always looking for the next 50. I come across some barrels that I call piggy banks. They're damn near completely empty. I don't know about y'all, but I wanted everything when I was a little kid. No way my mom and dad could buy me everything. I'd get all pissed off, run into my bedroom. I'd grab my piggy bank and I'd shake it because I figured for some reason, I thought I'd figure out how much money I had just by shaking my piggy bank. By now, your listeners have figured out I haven't really grown up yet. So I come across a whiskey barrel that's, damn near empty, and I shake it because I think I can figure out how much whiskey's left in it. So I don't taste those piggy banks right then and there. There's only a couple of gallons, and it would blow my palate out. They pay me to do what I'm doing, so we're going to use the term work pretty loosely. But, I got work to do and find those next 50 for small batch. So I don't taste the piggy bank right then and there. It'd be like licking a Kool-Aid packet. It just blow your palate out. So I kick those bad boys off to the side. And then later in the year, I'll go back and start tasting my way through those and just look for a big old group of piggy banks that play well together, represent what I think a Texas weeded bourbon at a hazmat or a high cast strength uncut should do, which, still be a little sweet up front, let you know you got something going on. Don't get on the edge or under your palate, long and lingering. Check all the boxes, give you something to think about. You think about it just enough that you say, yep, I want another sip of that. I can't believe I'm going to drink this high proof bourbon. And before you know it, you've knocked back a couple fingerfuls and you're searching the secondary market for your extra bottles. So
yeah. So how many, you said 50 barrels, what you pull aside, but what this year's release, just give our listeners a feel. How many bottles are going to be produced of the Cowboy Bourbon? How many states will it ultimately hit the shelves on?
Yeah, I think the sales team, I think they wanted about 9,600. I hardly ever give anybody everything they want. So I think I got about 9430 or so in me this year. Really, it's better not to work for a quantity. It's just not. It never works out for anybody really. So again, I just tasting my way through those piggy banks and the ones that are going to play well together. Check all the boxes for me. If I don't quite get as many bottles as everyone wants, I'm okay with that. As long as the liquid's where it needs to be, and the 50. Just so I don't want to confuse anybody. Those 50 that I'm looking for, that's how I make my small batch bourbon. Is 50 to 55 that I marry together over and over and over. Cowboy can be several hundred barrels that only have 1 or 2 gallons in them. Every year is a little different for sure, but not really looking for a total number to hit. Just not a healthy way for me to put bourbon together.
So is the Cowboy Bourbon typically in the upper floors of the rick house? I mean, the evaporation on that, if you're filling them full or close to full, I know you guys don't fill them all the way full, but you're only getting a couple gallons out of a barrel and you have to put hundreds of barrels together. Is it because of the Texas heat?
Yeah. I mean, it's making bourbon whiskey is an absolute terrible business plan. It is. It's not. You can do so many smarter things with your cash than make bourbon whiskey. That's for sure. Then you do it in Texas where it gets a little warm from time to time in Texas. But it's not 100+ every day. A lot of folks just think we all wear cowboy hats and we all have oil platforms and ride a horse to work, and that's just not true. And it's also not 120 every single day. We have huge temperature swings almost every day in high Texas, 30 to 40 degrees almost year round. So the backseat of my old pickup looks like my closet. But those extreme temperature changes is making some great bourbon whiskey in high Texas. And, every barrel leaks. Some leak more than others. Then once that starts to happen, the evaporation, which we call it angel share, that it really expedites the evaporation because it was a leaker, and it just starts creating more and more pressure, and then those leakers turn into piggy banks. So thankfully, not every barrel ends up being a piggy bank, or we wouldn't have that beautiful rainbow that we produce from small batch all the way through Cowboy. We have 9 different expressions that we're really, really proud of.
Yeah. So Donnis, you guys are producing a lot of whiskey. I didn't understand. My gosh, that is dark. Holy smokes,
Yeah.
Ben!
I'm pouring it out.
That's like molasses.
I didn't realize the scale of the distilling you guys are doing to be able to turn out, the kind of the quantity you're talking about of the barrels.
Yeah, it's we've been grinding, for over 15 years. We take a couple Hallmark days off, Mother's Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and but I mean we're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have a beautiful, beautiful facility. I got 16 dream makers and who are just amazing production operators who are dedicated to the craft. And right now we're filling 53-gallon barrels. Right now, I'll go back we're close. We're getting real close to October now, so I'll make a turn and go back to 15s. But about 70% of my inventory is 53-gallon barrels, and about 30% is 15-gallon barrels. But we're laying down 24 53s every day right now. So
wow,
we've been warming up with the honeydew. It's only 80 proof, so we thought we would we'd take a few sips of it. We'll come back to it, but I want to try this Cowboy bourbon.
Yeah,
140.9 proof, and it is dark.
The color's spectacular.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of the Balmorhea because remember how dark it is,
right? And they double barrel to get, it brings out that darkness. But like this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I do want to come back to Balmorhea because that's like I said in the beginning, it's one of my favorites. It is. I mean, just the flavors are. I mean, it's just different. Yeah. It's so different, and I love it. But
Ben, the specs on what we're drinking right now. This is the 2023, right? Cowboy bourbon.
Cowboy bourbon. It was released on September 23rd. It actually has the sample has your signature on. Is that really your signature?
Yes, sir. I signed every one of those.
Did you really?
Yeah. I dipped that one out of the bucket, put it in there. Team dipped those little bottles. I call those tailgaters. Mm-hmm. Now that you all are putting them on the web, the whole damn world's going to want them. So, but I call those my tailgaters. Those are just my personal little stash. And it's 4 ounce Boston Round, TSA approved. So
it is. It's right at 4 ounces. I can take that anywhere, can't I?
Yes, sir. Can't get on an airplane with a Cowboy though. Nothing over 140. That's why we call it hazmat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did not realize that.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I didn't take this anywhere with me. All right. So it reminds me a lot of the Balmorhea. It is the flavors are.
Yeah, but think about the proof.
The Balmorhea. What is the Balmorhea?
It's 115 compared to 140.
And this is 140, but it doesn't taste like. I mean, it's not like blowing my socks off. It's not like hot.
Overpowering.
It's not overpowering.
Yeah. No,
I think
profile is terrific.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important from that 80 proof honeydew that y'all have been sipping on all the way to that brand new Garrison Brothers 2023 Cowboy at 140.9 and everything in between those that we release. I'm a firm believer that the flavor has to overpower the proof. Yep. If you ever get the ethanol, the alcohol content, and it's so forward that you don't get any of the flavors, man, that's hard. That's hard for folks to spend hard-earned money on that more than once. And
I agree with that. You do not get the ethanol on this one at all. I mean, it is. Yeah, it's just packed. It's packed with flavor.
Well, and it's such a big oak finish, and it's not going to be kind of from an age perspective a very old bourbon, but with all the extremities. The color is beautiful. The nose is spot on, and the flavors are long lasting.
Yeah, the finish is super long.
You know what it is? It's like it is definitively a Garrison Brothers bourbon. Yeah. I mean,
Check the box.
It is. Yeah, this is going to be. I'm going to find some bottles of this. This is going to be one of my drinkers.
I was going to say, I mean, if you drink bourbon, in America, you got to track this down because, I think the only way you can really replicate this is double and triple oaking or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
That's even then, it's not going to taste like there's something about this.
Well, it's the heat.
It's got to be the heat. It's got to be the water, right? I mean,
the water, the extremities. And, but this is very unique. It's excellent.
Donnis, I'm not a tasting notes guy. I can't tell you. I mean, people get on and they'll say, "Oh, I taste cherry and I taste stone fruit, whatever the hell that is," and I can't do that. I either like it or I don't. And I can tell you if there's a lot of ethanol, I can taste that. What notes would you say are on the you get from the Cowboy bourbon?
Yeah, and we could hang out and drink together. You're preaching to the choir. I'm not a big fan when someone tells me, "Oh man, the nose on that is cherry blossoms in the spring on the north side of Japan." I'm like, "Come on, man, that's just not who I am." But what's pretty powerful is when someone tells me, "Man, I'm right back in the kitchen with my mom, looking at a green Formica countertop. I get so much pancake syrup on that small batch. And I was a spoiled little shit. My mom warmed up Butterworth and put it on my French toast on Sunday." Now, that's a positive association to something that I had a chance to create with an amazing team. And then it puts you right back in a great moment. That's what I'm about. Because what I have learned, I can stand in front of 500 people. And if I say vanilla enough times, everybody writes vanilla on the paper.
Right.
And I'm looking for positive associations. I want people to like it or not like it. I held the flashlight for my dad when I was a little kid, so there ain't nothing you can say that's going to hurt my feelings.
You never get that right, do you?
No, sir.
But it's such a good balance, though, of all the things you look for in a bourbon. I mean, I get a lot of that oak initially, but I mean, you're right, vanilla and caramel, but then you get those dark fruit, and the fruits are great.
So here's what it reminded me of.
Good balance. Very dark, deep.
I distinctly remember the first time that I had Garrison Brothers. We were at a buddy's, my friend Michael's law office, and we were watching a Christmas parade. It was down below, and he had the Balmorhea, and he opened it up, and we tried it, and I fell in love with it. And that's what it reminded me of. Like the very first time that I had the Garrison Brother, because it's so different, so distinctive. This one in particular with the Balmorhea, it's very similar to me. What are the differences? I mean, of course, other than proof. I mean, you've got 140 versus 140.9 versus 115. What is it about the process that's different?
Yeah, so for the Cowboy bourbon, I want it to be like, I'm not trying to make a hazmat, but I do want it to be a high proof expression, uncut, unfiltered. That's as close as I can get the Garrison Brothers Texas straight bourbon drinker into the barn with me. That's as authentic as I can make it. And I want them to really taste and enjoy and have an opportunity to experience what our extreme temperature changes can do to bourbon whiskey. And that's why I call all those piggy banks are like Texas survivors. But it's real easy to make a soggy toothpick or an ashtray. You can over oak something. You can get it pretty dirty pretty quick. So you still got to taste them. You got to get to know them. And are they going to play well together? And Balmorhea is a double barrel bourbon. And so when I'm out there looking for the next 50 for small batch, I come across barrels that for me is just, that morning after Halloween, mom told you do not eat all that chocolate out of that pumpkin. You cannot have it all. Somehow we always figure out how to get it all the way up to our room. We ate it all. You wake up that morning, you're like, damn, she was right. Your mouth is just gummed up with chocolate. And I come across barrels that put me right back to that plastic pumpkin. And it's just all this candy bar right up front, but then where did it go? And bourbon whiskey needs to be long and lingering. It has to check all the boxes. It shouldn't drink in parts, in my opinion. It should be a positive experience throughout your whole palate. And so I take all those barrels that are just this loaded candy bar on the front, marry that liquid together, manipulate the alcohol content with some rainwater, and put it in a very custom 25-gallon barrel. and that's lightly charred and heavily toasted, and leave it in there for a couple of summers. And I want that second barrel to give it some wrap, some depth, give it a little backbone and character, something for you to chew on and think about. But I don't want to crawl all the way over the front of your palate and ruin that candy bar. So Balmorhea, I'm cheating a little bit. I'm using 2 barrels to get all that flavor. Whereas Cowboy, the Angels in Texas did all that. I just get the credit.
Right.
Do you get a lot of evaporation? Is there a big Angel share when you do the second barrel on Balmorhea? Do you lose a lot over the 2 summers?
I mean, I don't know your definition of a lot, but I'm losing about 15% every summer. Most people that make bourbon whiskey lose about 3% a year. So,
wow.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's a lot to me.
Yeah.
Well, we'd have a lot more if you didn't lose that.
Yeah. But, what's left in there is pretty special. So it's like everything else in life. You got to give up something to get something. And
you're not going to find this bourbon in Kentucky. This flavor, color,
it's different. It's different.
You might find it at 15 years of age, right? But this is amazing because they're able to, it's like rapid acceleration of age, but it is really good. Yeah. I should own more of these. I don't even know why I don't.
And, so Donnis, our number one state, I would mention this in the news section, our number one state for our, not just our subscribers, but also downloads is Texas. We get a lot of downloads out of Dallas, a lot of out of Houston, Fort Worth. We get a lot. And we had, after Dan Garrison was on, people in Texas had reached out to me and said, we have not had Garrison brothers. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, you're right there. You need to be there September 23rd, get you a breakfast burrito and a bottle of Cowboy bourbon. But the people that have tried it, even outside of Texas, of course, Texas is very proud of their, the first Texas bourbon. People outside of Texas are loving this.
Yeah.
Loving it. When I was in Louisville a couple of weeks ago and talked to some people, and they brought up Garrison brothers and talked about how much they're enjoying it there. So what is the plan from here, at least from on the business side? Are you guys in 50 states? Do you want to go in 50 states? What's your plan? Can you handle going into 50 states?
Yeah, so the dream is someday that everywhere you see a bottle of, Maker's Mart or Woodford Reserve, whatever one you want to pick, every watering hole you go into, you see it. The goal is that you see my bourbon sitting right there with those. I think it deserves to be there. And that's the goal. We're pretty young, we're just coming up on 20 years old. We're a couple hundred years behind the bourbon party. So we want to do it right. To do it right, you got to have a really, really good liquid. I think we've done that. I think you have to be authentic, genuine. And that's who we are. We have good stories, or we make them up. Don't ever let the truth get in the way of a good story. Dan Garrison taught me that. So you got to be good storytellers. I feel that we are. We are in all 50 states. We've just recently started to do all the blocking and tackling to start to entering all of the control states. That's a new arena for us. But yeah, we're on all 50. We have enough inventory. I don't feel like I'm out over my skis. And there's more to come for sure.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to ask you I usually ask every guest when you go home, what do you drink? But since you're a master distiller, I'm guessing it's going to be something that's not bourbon.
Without a doubt. Water.
Water.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a different question. You get to have a glass of whiskey with anyone you want, living or dead. Who is it, and what would you drink?
Wow, what a great question. So my dad was a non-drinker. I'm going to say my father. He supported everything I ever did. He always believed in me. And even though he's not a drinker, he wouldn't appreciate it. He wouldn't even probably drink it with me. But I drink his and mine. One more face-to-face conversation with my dad. That would be a that would be so much better than anything in any damn glass. So I'm going to pick my pops.
Oh, and
awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely. And then I know he doesn't drink, but what would you sip on? Something your grandpa made or something you make?
Oh, it'd probably be my small batch bourbon. I told y'all I married my 1990 prom date, so it takes me a while to get over something. And I'm not complaining. I'm not trying to brag, but I taste thousands and thousands of barrels every year. I'm always looking for the next 50 to marry together for small batch bourbon. So it's on my palate. It's what I'm thinking about. So it's my desert island. I don't need a fire starter or a pocket knife or flip flops. Give me a case of small batch bourbon and send me on to my island. If I can't figure out how to get off of it, I'll be okay with my 6-pack of small batch.
What's next for Garrison Brothers? What do you guys up? You got anything in the rick house that you're saving for?
Yeah.
You can tell us
for sure. You said you were sipping on a little bit of my honeydew, which is this beautiful honey infused 80 proof bourbon. I don't know if Dan told you all even why I made it, but Nancy Garrison always wanted a honey infused bourbon. I think it's healthy to poke the bear. Dan told me absolutely do not ever put anything in my bourbon and do not ever make an 80 proof bourbon. Dan calls that basement bourbon at 80 proof. So I think it's healthy to poke the bear. That bottle you have in front of you has honey in it and it's 80 proof. So we named it Honeydew because I make Dan Garrison's bourbon for him with an amazing team, and it was on his honeydew list.
List. I didn't realize
right.
that.
That's amazing.
That's why we call it honeydew. But the reason I bring that up is because you asked, hey, what could be new out there? And we're really, really close to having cast strength honeydews. They've been laid down for a long time, so I found those original barrels on my palate. That they had some honey notes. We wanted to infuse those, which we did, about 6 to 8 month infusion with the honey, then put it back in that original white American oak barrel and put it out in the barns and just let it keep on aging.
Wow.
And so I've been tasting them 127, 128 proof, doesn't drink like it. It's higher proof than that 80 in front of you. But really, really liking that and have quite a few in the barns. So that'll probably, not everything I put together makes it to glass. Sometimes it only makes it to the Christmas party, but I think the cast strength honeydew will make an appearance.
And maybe you could kind of impart upon our listeners again what makes your honey whiskey different than the others out there, because I'm really I've read about it. Dan talked a little bit about it, but why don't you tell us, it's not just like you're pouring honey into the barrel, but you all go through an extra process that makes this a really complex, unique, honey. The flavors are tremendous.
Thank you. The first thing is it's Texas straight bourbon whiskey. It's Garrison Brothers wheated bourbon. And it's a great 4 to 6 year old when I come across the barrel that on my palate, have some honey notes and say, hey, let's highlight that so more palates can enjoy that flavor profile and make the real boss happy. Nancy Garrison, Dan's wife, is the real boss. Dan thinks he is, but Nancy's the real boss. She always wanted it. So it's always smart to make the real boss happy. But, and the reason I go into that is, a lot of other products on the market may be liqueur based and have given consumers that artificial, that goopy, syrupy on the palate. Hey, that's not for me. Whereas, a bourbon drinker is like, hey, most of them don't even want to put ice or water in their, you start talking cocktails and they raise an eyebrow at you like you said something bad. So when you start talking about putting honey in it, you're going to lose a lot of the old guard pretty quick. But if they'll just taste it, they'll realize, hey, this is a great wheated bourbon. It just happens to have some subtle honey notes. And so we didn't start with a liqueur. We actually started with a great wheated bourbon that we made. And then the infusion is really, really subtle. We didn't want to make it syrupy or goopy. So we just take the barrels that the that the bourbon originally aged in, cut it into little cubes, about the size of a sugar cube or a die, to just maximize the surface ratio to make the little wooden square, 8 sides. And we press a little bit of Burleson's organic wildflower honey in it, and we make a tea bag out of some unbleached cheesecloth, put it down in a tank for about 6 or 8 months. Periodically, I go by the tank and I taste it. And when I feel like I've highlighted the right notes and I haven't ruined a great wheated bourbon, we'll add some water to it, lower it down to 80 proof. I only make it 80 proof just because Dan said, don't ever make a basement bourbon. So I made it 80 just to mess with them. And
you would have no idea that it's 80 proof.
Yeah.
It's full of flavors.
Yep.
And, after drinking the cowboy bourbon, I was worried going back to because we're drinking the honeydew again. I was worried that the flavors weren't going to be there, but the flavors are more transparent now. Like now the taste buds are opened up. This is really, you definitely get the honey after that.
Yeah. Even I can taste the honey.
Huge amounts of honey, but you get the bourbon. I mean, it's definitely distinctly bourbon.
Yeah. I think what really helps Garrison Brothers Honeydew is that the base product is a great wheated bourbon. It's not a liqueur. Nothing against liqueurs. That's just, bourbon drinkers typically don't want liqueur.
Has Dan admitted that his wife had a great idea?
Oh, you guys had him on. He's not the brightest bulb, but I think he's figured that one out.
Smart
I'm
man.
sure she won't let him forget either.
We can't make enough of it, so she was right.
Yeah. After our episode with him, we went out and found a couple bottles, but I kept them on the shelf for this interview. I had not tasted it before, so it is very good. It is very good. I think this is one that a lot of people, even non-bourbon drinkers, would drink this and really enjoy it.
I mean, it's you want to say like, well, maybe it's like a dessert. Like I say dessert, but like after dinner, pull this thing out for people that aren't big bourbon drinkers because they've got a lot of those great flavors you want after you have your dessert and things. But it kind of drinks like an everyday drinker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really nice, and you would never know it's 80 proof.
No.
But then again, you'd never know that the cowboy was 140 hazmat either.
No, if I'd have tasted the cowboy bourbon, I would not have guessed it was hazmat. And not that I've had a lot of hazmat bourbons, but
or the Balmoral at 115. I think what makes your whiskey so interesting, aside from the fact that you wax top with different colors, all your blue and gray and yellow, is each of these are very distinct kind of bourbons, all three of those. I mean, that you can't replicate probably in any other state except for maybe Arizona or something. Then you could probably do in Texas, and Arizona wouldn't have the water Texas has.
I think all of these that you taste,
heat,
know it's a Garrison Brothers. There's something about Garrison Brothers. It's got to be the heat, the water, the process.
Yeah,
I could tell you. Well, I could do a blind on this honeydew and tell you where it was from. Same thing with the Balmoral and the cowboy bourbon. Well, there's something different about it.
And help us out here once again, because Dan did a great job. He talked about how many days a year that you're over 90 degrees there at the distillery. It's like some massive number. Is it almost?
Oh yeah. I mean, we just went through a gauntlet of over like 100 consecutive days where we were over 100. I mean, so, when I'm cruising into work and it's saying 69, 70 degrees and I'm going home, it says 105, 106, that's a long day. But that's a heck of a cycle. There's places that make great bourbon whiskey that wait 2 or 3 quarters and beg for that type of cycle that we get day in and day out. So that heat up, cool off, is, we're getting it. And it's obvious when you look at the depth and the extraction that we're getting, that flavor profile. You guys have mentioned it several times, that, hey, I know this is a Garrison Brothers. Everything I've ever had has that one unique mouthfeel, that one unique flavor. And that's from the extraction. That's from our Texas heat. And it does separate us from the crowd. And that's always healthy.
Donnis, did I read somewhere that you guys had to get barrels with thicker staves because of the heat. Is that right, or am I crazy?
No. When we first started, we bought, if someone made a whiskey barrel, we bought one and we put our white dog in it at different proofs, trying to figure out entry proofs. And so the first couple of years, all that R&D, and the first, August that we got into, we could just smell the ethanol. We're like, what in the world? So we go out to the barn and almost all the heads of the barrels had popped. And it just because of how much pressure that our intense Texas summer heat created. Right then in that moment, we thought, oh man, we've lost everything, all of this work, all of this, we were going to learn so much from this. But now, so many years later, looking back on it, it's the best thing that ever happened, because it sent us down the rabbit hole of all about the barrel. Instead of just buying a traditional whiskey barrel, we went to the Coopers, and very, very proud people who generational Coopers, and that, they wanted to help us build a barrel that would work for our environment. And then we went down that rabbit hole, and we learned so much about white American oak and toast levels and char levels, and on and on and on. And it has really paid dividends now. We do have all custom barrels basically for each SKU, and we put a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of money into it. But as they say, the proof's in the pudding, and that liquid in the glass will tell you that's not just an old traditional hogshead with a number 3 char that got yard seasoned for 3 months.
Well, that is for sure. Donnis, thank you for coming on. Folks, if you haven't tried Garrison Brothers, you are missing out. I mean, I have said it time and time again on here, even before we had Dan Garrison on, when I was talking about Bomberay a year or more ago. You've got to pick this up. I think you would really enjoy the Honeydew. The Cowboy Bourbon will absolutely blow your mind. It's so good. It's a little more limited quantity, so getting a bottle might be tough, but always the Balmorhea is exceptional. So you got to go pick it up, especially the folks in Texas that are listening. We had some of the emails that said they hadn't tried it yet. You guys got to go pick up a bottle. But everybody else, Kentucky, our friends out in California, they're listening. You got to go get you some.
Well, and it's wonderful to kind of get the master distiller on after getting Dan on, and Dan talk about the story about how this all came together. And now you kind of get it. You see the passion of the master distiller.
Well, I appreciate y'all. Thank you for drinking good bourbon. And, if I would have been first, you wouldn't want to talk to Dan. So I'm glad you guys let Dan go first.
We saved the best for last.
Yeah, they won't be all mad at me. So, but I appreciate y'all drinking good bourbon. Thanks for letting me join your podcast, and hope y'all enjoy that Cowboy and that Honeydew as much as we do making it.
We appreciate you
Thanks,
coming
Donnis.
on. Take care.
Thank you.
Wow. So we had Dan Garrison and Donnis Todd. We next have to have Dan's wife, the real boss.
Yeah,
the real
exactly.
boss.
Well, I was saying to you guys before we started, I mean, the scale of that thing is pretty crazy. I didn't understand. I didn't know they were in 50 states. I didn't know they, when he's talking about, I mean, I'm glad you did the math, because I was thinking in my head about the Cowboy Bourbon, and he's talking about these piggy bank barrels with a couple of gallons. And he's like, yeah, we did 9,400 bottles. It's like, well, gosh dang, man, that's a lot of barrels. That's a lot of 5-gallon barrels or whatever, however many it is.
That's
impressive.
I need a calculator for that, but
it's about 45 barrels. But I mean, what he did was he was he had those 50 barrels that are like the base for
the small batch.
For his small batch, correct.
Right.
Yeah, but for the Cowboy.
He's only getting a couple gallons per barrel.
Right. So to get to 9, you're probably talking about 50 barrels.
No.
50 barrels.
It's gotta be more than
100 barrels, maybe 100.
Yeah, he said at least 100.
About 100 barrels. You're right.
I mean, can you imagine?
No,
I did not ask him the age statement.
I don't want to argue with Joe, although I love arguing with Joe. Think about it's 5. Let's say it's 5 gallons per barrel. That's 1/10 of a normal barrel. So if you had, that's basically 100 barrels would be the equivalent of 10 barrels. 10 barrels is only like 1,500 bottles. So it's like 500.
He said about 100. That's about right. But that'd be about 90 bottles per barrel, and it's a younger whiskey. Like a Jack might put off 220 bottles and it's a little older actually, So I'm guessing it's somewhere in that 100 to 150 barrels, but that's all shitload of barrels still to produce this small amount.
We're gonna agree to disagree on this math.
We're gonna do the math. We won't do it on air, but we will do the math at some point.
I know.
I'll update it online.
I can't fight with a Cornell grad.
So yeah, we've got a Cornell grad,
Syracuse grad, just like literally 60 miles.
Yeah, baby.
Disagree. That's me, baby. I do have the PhD.
Yeah. Fair.
Well,
no, you're right.
We'll let these math nerds figure it out. The lawyer just says move on.
That was awesome. I was saying to you, Ben, I mean, the honeydew, not probably what any of us would typically pick. I thought it was really good though. I mean, it's interesting, for something geared to maybe more of a novice whiskey drinker, right? Like lower proof and a little more sweetness, but it drank nice.
I just like the process of it, that the fact they took an idea, unlike some of our other guests who took an idea on a whim and produce a particular flavored whiskey. But here, so Dan's wife comes up with the idea of like a honey, she likes honey and the honey whiskey, but what do? They chop up used prime Garrison brother cowboy, barrels basically.
Yep.
Into little cubes. They soak them in Texas honey. And then after the honey's fully absorbed, they drop them in those tanks for like 7 months. And so to me, it feels more, being from West Virginia, right, more natural. And they really thought about this. Like, you know what? If we're going to do this, let's do it the right way.
But, here's the thing that I like particularly when, first of all, Dan Garrison, Donnis, Todd, they seem to me, they're like the same. There's these good, the good guys, the guys that you'd want to sit down and watch a football game with and drink a beer, eat some chicken wings or whatever. They're just damn good guys.
Right.
They respect the process.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of the interview we did with Julian Van Winkle, and he was all about the process. Always find bourbon. Always find bourbon. That's the way they're thinking.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not taking shortcuts. They're doing it. They're doing it the hard way. And he said, if you want to lose a bunch of money, this is the way to do it.
And by the way, almost 20 years, which again, I mean, I knew they'd been around, but 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
20 years.
That's impressive.
And it tells you that even after 20 years to finally have a stock where you can reach 50 states and really it's probably not enough.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it tells you the cycle you go through and how long it really takes to like develop enough inventory and,
Yeah. And I mean, you think, so I don't know when it almost 2004, 2005, whenever they started. I mean, that's pre-bourbon boom, like definitively. Yeah. It's not like, I mean, listen, there's been a lot of people coming to this business in the last 10 years. They were before all that, which is awesome. Good for them.
And from Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not Kentucky bourbon.
No,
it's not. It's very distinct,
and
very different, but exceptional. It is exceptional.
And we need to probably bring balcons in.
Yeah.
Just because they're the other,
Yeah, they're the other big dog down there.
Sure. And if in fact it's about the heat and the water and the specialized barrels, it'd be good to get their perspective as well. But this is, it's impressive. It really is. It's not like anything I've ever had before. Could you
do this in Las Vegas? Could you do the same thing in Vegas, or is the water not there?
But it's a cycling too. That's the thing. And then the hill country, right? So in Houston, I do a lot of business down there, and Houston's been like 100 degrees. He was talking about it, but Houston, like the temperature drops to like 94.
Oh yeah.
In the hill country though, where those guys are, you get this big swing, and that's what you need. Like you need the hot and you need to cool off at night, so you get the cycling. So
that's what he said. He'd go to work, it'd be 60, and when he left, it'd be
so like Vegas. I think you have the same issue.
Well, we had the smoke wagon guys on, and
Aaron,
and we asked those questions to Aaron.
Yeah.
Why is your whiskey kind of unique? Is it the heat? Is it Nevada? Right? Is it the extremities? And in the end, we could never really get like a straight answer relative to like whether or not that made their whiskey or bourbon, unique. I think it probably maybe Texas. It's the right dynamic of the water, like you said, where they are.
Where they are.
Crazy extremities in the weather that can produce an amazing whiskey like this. That's like 4 to 6 years of age. Try doing that anywhere else.
Yeah. I was going to ask, how do we know how old the Cowboy bourbon?
Yeah, it's like 6 max. 6 years of.
I don't think I asked him.
Not age stated.
It's not,
but it's in that range, 4 to 6 year range.
But how do you lose that much bourbon in 6 years. He said 15% a year. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense, right?
Well, Dan had said, that's why I was trying to ask him. It's something like how many days a year are over 90 degrees where they are? Not whether it falls.
Right, just the peak.
But it was like it was like 11 months a year or something. It's something like insane.
The majority, yeah.
It's like, can you imagine aging stuff? No wonder all the heads were like blowing off like firecrackers.
I don't know what it is. It's working.
Yeah, it's a neat business.
So I'm going to say it again. If you haven't had Garrison Brothers, you have got to try it. Cowboy Bourbon, we just tried the new one, 140.9. It is outstanding. Balmorhea is outstanding. And Kyle just had both. You just tried the Balmorhea and the Cowboy Bourbon.
And the Honeydew.
And the Honeydew.
Oh, I like it. I like that Cowboy. The Cowboy is like, man, the depth on that thing is crazy. So, Balmorhea is really good.
Balmorea's good.
But that Cowboy is, boy, awesome. I was like, man, this is, and does not drink like 140 proof.
It does not.
I mean, it's a foolproof bourbon, but not, it's not blowing your head off, like you said.
Yeah, I think we all if they've got 9,000 bottles out there of the 2023 release of Cowboy Bourbon, we need to get.
I need some.
Well, we got to get ahead of the curve because that means they're going to hit a lot of shelves. That's a lot of bourbon in the U.S.
Yeah, but for 50 states, though, that's not a lot of bourbon.
That's 9,000 bottles. Buffalo Trace releases, but
but you're talking about some of the orphan barrels. They're doing like 60,000 bottles.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the most recent one, but the difference is, and now maybe we're kind of spoiling it because we're telling all our listeners out there. But how many people are going to go out and spend $200 on a Garrison Cowboy Bourbon? Right. So they should be out there.
The demand should not be as crazy as it is. I agree.
Correct.
Yeah,
it should be there. But we're going to just tell you all, go get this thing. Just get one bottle, try it, sit down with your biggest bourbon geek friend, and then pour a glass of it, take a look at it, try it, and then send Ben an email.
Ben at bourbonpodcast.com. Send me all your emails. Trust me, I read them all. I also read all of the messages that we get on social media. I like the critique. Even when you're mad at me, I still like your critique. I appreciate it. Or mad at Joe. Nobody's ever mad at me. They're always mad at Joe.
It's Joe.
What?
Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Are you enjoying Bourbon Podcast? Be sure to leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. And by the way, thanks for listening.